The ER was slammed. Broken arms, fevers, car crashes, chaos. Just another Tuesday night. Emma Clarke had been a nurse for 6 years. She didn't flinch at blood or barked orders anymore. But when they wheeled in the old man unconscious, with a heart barely hanging on something, made her stop. He looked like a dozen other veterans who shuffled in and out of hospitals. Gray stubble, paper-thin skin, boots worn down to the sole. But as they cut his shirt to place defibrillator pads, her breath caught. On his chest, just above the heart, was a faded tattoo. A small, jagged lightning bolt, wrapped in a broken chain. She knew that symbol. It was carved into a medal that sat in her father's drawer. A medal he never spoke about. After they stabilized the patient and wheeled him to the ICU, Emma couldn't concentrate. The image burned in her mind, that precise design etched into weathered skin, identical to something she'd discovered years ago during childhood mischief. She'd been 8, maybe 9, sneaking into her father's study to raid his candy drawer when she found it. Hidden behind tax documents and old photographs was a small velvet pouch, soft with age. Inside lay a medal unlike the others displayed proudly on his office wall. This one was different, heavier. The medal was darker, almost black, with intricate engravings that caught light strangely. A lightning bolt wrapped in broken chains, and beneath it, 3 letters etched so small she had to squint. DMH. Dead. What's this one for? She'd ask later, holding it carefully in her small palm. Her father, Colonel Robert Clarke, usually proud to share war stories, had gone very still. He took the medal gently, rewrapped it, and placed it back in the drawer. That one stays hidden, sweetheart, he'd said, his voice carrying something she'd never heard before. Some stories aren't ready to be told. She'd never asked again, but she'd never forgotten. John M. Carter, age 81, no known family, no emergency contacts, no visitors, just another forgotten veteran in a system overwhelmed by forgotten veterans. For 3 days, he drifted between consciousness and something deeper, not quite sleep, not quite surrender. Emma found herself checking on him during breaks, adjusting his blankets, monitoring vitals that remained stubbornly weak but stable. She'd seen this before. Elderly men who came in alone and left the same way, their stories dying with them. But something about John Carter wouldn't let her maintain professional distance. Maybe it was the tattoo. Maybe it was the way his hands, even unconscious, maintained perfect military positioning. Or maybe it was the fact that, despite his obvious poverty, the worn clothes, the calloused feet, the absence of anyone who cared, there was something dignified about him that didn't match his circumstances. On Thursday evening, during her night shift, she brought in a small speaker and played Glenn Miller softly by his bedside. She'd read somewhere that familiar music could help comatose patients find their way back. That's when his eyes opened. Not gradually, not confused. Alert, present, studying her face with the intensity of someone solving a puzzle. "Your eyes," he whispered, voice rusty from disuse. "You have his eyes." Emma leaned forward. Whose eyes? But he'd already slipped back into sleep, leaving her with more questions than answers. Emma waited until her father would be home from his evening walk, 9 p.m. sharp. Same routine for 20 years. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong? Did you ever serve with someone named John Carter?" The silence stretched so long she thought the call had dropped. "Emma." His voice had changed completely. "Where did you hear that name?" She told him everything. The patient, the tattoo, the way John had looked at her and mentioned someone's eyes. Her father listened without interruption, and she could hear him breathing carefully, the way he did when processing difficult information. "That symbol you found when you were little," he finally said. "It's called the Discretionary Medal of Honor. Only 5 were ever made, all classified, all for actions the military couldn't officially acknowledge." "What did he do?" Another long pause. "Operation Nightfall, 1967. Bad intelligence put us in a village that wasn't supposed to have civilians. When we realized the mistake, command ordered us to proceed anyway. Couldn't abort without compromising a larger mission." Emma felt her stomach tighten. "What happened?" John disobeyed direct orders, broke radio silence, warned the village, held off enemy fire alone for 40 minutes while 200 people evacuated. Her father's voice grew quieter. He saved every life in that village. But officially, the operation never happened. The village was never there, and John Carter was transferred to a desk job and told to forget what he'd seen. They gave him a medal they couldn't acknowledge? 5 of us witnessed it. We each got a medal to keep the secret alive, even if the story had to die. I always wondered what happened to John. He disappeared after discharge, never reached out, never tried to claim benefits or recognition. Dad, he's been living on the streets. He almost died alone. She heard her father draw a sharp breath. Bring me that medal tomorrow, Emma. It's time John Carter knew someone remembered. Emma arrived at the hospital the next evening, carrying a small velvet pouch. John was awake, sitting up slightly, looking more present than she'd seen him. You called him, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? John smiled, the first real expression she'd seen from him. Because you have Bobby Clarke's eyes, and Bobby Clarke never could let sleeping dogs lie. Emma sat down and opened the pouch. John's reaction was immediate and profound. His hands shook as he reached for the medal, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. I thought I was the only one left, he whispered. Dad kept it for 60 years. He said it was for someone who deserved more than silence. Over the next hour, John told her stories she'd never heard from her father. Not war stories, but stories of friendship, of impossible choices, of men who did the right thing when the right thing had no official recognition. He spoke of villages saved and lives preserved, of decisions made in moments when character mattered more than career. Your father saved my life twice, John said. Once in that village, when he provided covering fire, and again when he kept that medal. I thought the world had forgotten what we did there. Some things are too important to forget, Emma replied. John nodded, still holding the medal. I spent 60 years thinking I'd made the wrong choice, that maybe I should have followed orders, trusted the system, kept quiet like a good soldier. Do you still think that? He looked at her with eyes suddenly clear and bright. I think I finally understand why some medals have to be hidden. Not because the actions were wrong, but because the world wasn't ready to understand they were right. John Carter lived for 3 more months, long enough to receive proper veterans care, long enough to meet Emma's father in person for the first time in 6 decades, long enough to tell his story to a small group of military historians who specialized in classified operations. He died peacefully in his sleep on a Tuesday night, with Emma holding his hand during her shift break. His last words were a request. Make sure Bobby keeps both medals together. They were always meant to be a set. The funeral was small but meaningful. 5 elderly veterans Emma had never met appeared, each carrying similar medals, each with their own stories of actions that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Her father spoke briefly about friendship, honor, and the courage to do right when no one was watching. Emma learned that John had been researching her family for years, following her father's career from a distance, proud of his old friend's success, but never reaching out, never asking for help. The tattoo had been his way of carrying the memory, a permanent reminder of the most important decision he'd ever made. 2 years later, Emma still worked the same night shifts at the same hospital, but room 314 had been renamed the Carter Clarke Memorial Room, dedicated to veterans receiving end-of-life care. A small plaque by the door told a carefully edited version of the story, focusing not on classified details, but on the importance of recognizing unsung heroes. In her father's study, now in her own home after his passing, 2 medals sat in a glass case side by side. Not for display, but as a reminder that some stories take decades to tell, and some heroes wait a lifetime for recognition. Emma had learned something profound from her brief connection with John Carter, that heroism often requires choosing conscience over command, and that sometimes the most important witnesses to our actions are the ones we'll never meet. She kept a photo of John by her nursing station, not the hospital photo from his chart, but one her father had taken in 1967. 5 young soldiers standing in front of a village, arms around each other's shoulders, unaware that they were about to make choices that would define the rest of their lives. On quiet nights, when the ER was slow and she had time to think, Emma would remember John's words about medals that had to be hidden. She'd realize they weren't hidden from shame, but from a world that wasn't ready to understand that sometimes the highest honor comes with no official recognition. And in that understanding, she found peace with the questions that had haunted her childhood. Some stories weren't ready to be told then, but every story, eventually, finds its moment to emerge from the shadows and claim its place in the light. The medal her father kept wasn't about war. It was about remembering that courage and friendship could survive decades of silence, waiting patiently for the right person to bridge the gap between past and present. In the end, it had taken a nurse, a tattoo, and a father's love to finally bring a hero home.